Hello, all. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today about marketing your vet practice and then managing that growth from all that marketing, successful marketing that you'll be doing. My guest is Michael Rapino from MediaStead, and he's going to actually go first and introduce himself. I'm Holly Corcoran, CPA with Corcoran Business Advisory Services. I had a traditional practice for many years and decided to branch out virtually and provide just advisory services for veterinary practices as well as advanced tax planning and strategy. So I'll be talking after Michael, and I'll turn this over to him and he can share his screen and get going.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Let me add just one thing. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and we will answer them at the end.
Thanks, Holly. I'm so happy to be here to present telling your story through marketing. And the first thing I'd like to cover just broadly. So my name is Michael Rapino. I've been in business with MediaStead since 2013. And interestingly enough, this is a perfect time for me to be kind of talking through this because my business partner of that many years is planning to retire at the end of this year, and I'll be going through a full rebrand early next year. And so a lot of the things I'm covering today are things that are constantly churning in my mind right now. And so I'm happy to present this to you and hopefully give you some of that food for thought as well. I am the senior partner and creative director, soon to be full owner of Honeyquill Agency. That will be our new name. So, what is digital marketing? Digital marketing can mean so many things to so many people, but it provides you the opportunity, first and foremost, to get in front of people where they are. Okay, they're on their computers, they're on their phones. The digital world, it's not going away. And so essentially, for modern businesses, it provides extensive reach, giving access to global audience, offers cost-effective solutions, delivers measurable results, enables precise targeting, facilitates direct engagement, and it operates 24/7. Okay, so your digital marketing world is something that you should consider very, put a lot of thought into, because it could be overwhelming. And so I'm hoping by the end of this, I give you a little bit of a path to follow so that overwhelming feeling of too many platforms and too many places, you can shine a spotlight on it and really dig into the places you have to be in order to move your practice forward and grow properly in the digital world. Okay, so here you see the Lonely website, and this is your website. It could be a site that you had built and were hoping that, at the end of the day, you're online and people will start coming there. But that isn't really the experience that most of us have. And so here at MediaStead, we like to consider the full realm of possibilities with web-centric marketing as our model. Okay, so the website is the hub of your marketing world. It's the hub of, here are some examples: content marketing, social media marketing, search engine marketing, search engine optimization, email marketing. But there's so much more to consider than this. But if you consider that your website is the hub of that operation, then what we're really trying to strive for is to not be all over the place and do all of these things in every single platform. We use those platforms as a tool to get people to where you control. Okay, and that's a very important distinction. Your website is your property. It's your asset, and it's an asset that you should build and be mindful of, and you have full control over how that looks, and what content and the growth that you have. But all of these other platforms, they're simply tools or engines to get people to view your website, because as we've seen in recently, really within the past few years, we've had a mass exodus from various platforms. One platform in particular was taken down completely for some time, TikTok, that is. So you had people kind of scrambling, where am I going to go? How am I going to consume this content? Where if you set yourself up properly with the website as your hub of operations, then all of this external stuff can shift and fluctuate and change. But because you're controlling all of that properly and bringing people to where you are, that's where the magic happens. So your website, often first and sometimes only impression you make on potential customers. I covered most of this by rambling on the previous screen, but I'll just cover this briefly. Web-centric marketing uses online tools and strategies to attract visitors, convert them into leads and customers, and nurture those relationships. And that's important. In order to nurture a relationship, you need to be able to pull that person into your world, not keep them in all these separate worlds. I hope that makes sense. So this approach allows you to control your brand message and professional image, showcase your services and expertise, create personalized user experiences through various strategies within your website itself, various functionalities, potentially, as an example, patient portals and things of that nature. Capture and qualify leads in one central location instead of trying to scramble and figure out how to do that in separate platforms that you don't control. And track visitor behavior and optimize performance. And that last piece is extremely important. If you pull everybody into the hub of your operations and you're tracking that data properly, then that data becomes the way that you see what is working, what isn't working, how to shift and change with certain changes in the market and whatnot. So that's the very key advantage. While you're still able to use multiple platforms, and you should, in order to get in front of people where they most likely will be hanging out online, your website serves as the destination where prospects can get complete information, take action, and convert into customers. Okay, so what does that look like? It looks like this. This is the customer value journey, and most of us are probably aware of something like this, the sales funnel. And they're similar, and they actually tie together. So if you're familiar with this particular um, model, then the customer value journey ties in very well with that. The journey kind of takes it a little further, right? So the sales funnel, you have awareness, interest, decision, and action. Basically, it's a funnel shape because you're at the broadest sense of people not even knowing, maybe an inkling of who you are and maybe what you do. And then at the very bottom of that funnel, it gets narrower, and that means that they're getting closer and closer and closer to taking some kind of action with you. Okay. And so when you correlate the two together, awareness from the funnel goes into the aware stage. People are just kind of becoming aware of you, things that you might do to capture people's attention and things like that. Then we have the engage phase of the journey, and that's the interest phase of the funnel. Okay, and that kind of spans the engage and subscribe portion of the value journey. And so becoming aware, and then you're engaging with them as they become aware of you. Then subscribe is getting them so interested that they need to know more and they want to engage with you. And so instead of not being able to have direct access to them, you putting two and two together here, you have them do something like the most simple is getting on your email list. And then you can see that there's some arrows here, and those arrows are dotted because this isn't a once and done system. You go from subscribe to potentially converting. The conversion stage here, we like to do what's called an entry point offer. It's something really easily attainable, and that could be a free consultation. It doesn't even have to be a transactional thing, or it can be a small purchase. Perhaps they, you know, uh, a lot of time you might seasonally have a something that you'd like to talk about with puppies, like summertime, okay, flea and tick season or something like that, right? So you get a small purchase, come in, have a consultation, we'll check out your dog's teeth or whatever the case may be, and that goes right back into engaging. And that's a cyclical thing because you're constantly nurturing that relationship, and they could potentially convert several times. And that's a good thing because that gives you the ability to really build that relationship into the excite phase of the journey, which is the true. Now, this is action, but the true action happens when they ascend into many more things, right? This is where you excited them so much with those small offers, or how, maybe you're a fear-free clinic, and you're the first practice that took the time to really care for that behavioral part of things, and they're so excited that they ascend into being a long-term patient, a long-term customer, and ultimately they advocate and promote. Okay, so if you do the job right and you're constantly bringing your patients through this journey, ultimately part of that is that they're so excited and happy with what you do that they become your advocate. Okay, so putting this all together, what we want to do is bring your brand story to life. Okay, and what that looks like is you have the early part of your customer journey, you have the middle part of your customer journey, and then the later part of your customer journey, as we saw in the map that I laid out for you. And what that looks like is maybe early on, you're in the awareness phase and the engagement phase, and you're doing some content marketing, social media, SEO, showcasing your expertise and things like that, and really helping pet owners discover why you're different. What is that unique thing? What makes you stand out amongst the sea of competition? The middle of your journey, again, when we go into that subscribe phase and they're kind of dipping their toe in the conversion phase, is email campaigns, crafted landing pages that continue the conversation from where they are in your digital marketing universe into something that continues that conversation, as opposed to sending them to what I like to call the black hole, which is your homepage of your website. Okay, you want to create very specific, very pointed landing pages every chance you get. If you're spending money on a campaign, as an example, what would be better? Having, putting money into an ad campaign and then sending people to a very generic homepage that talks about broadly everything you do and offer, or having a very specific campaign talking about a specific thing directly to the person who has the need for that thing, and then sending them right to the continuation of the conversation through a landing page that then covers the different aspects of the thing that you can't possibly cover in an ad, as an example. Maybe a landing page video where you can really dig deep and show them your expertise and how authentic you are and happy to talk about these things. And that does a much better job at getting the point across and getting people to sort of engage with you, again, going back to those phases, than just, oh, I'll put my homepage on there and hope for the best, right? So you're turning interest into trust, and appointments, your first introduction to them as a, you know, having them come in with their pet, or even by themselves just to check out your facility or whatever that looks like. You're giving them the opportunity to see that flow unfold through really mindful development of content, development of assets, and those things that you create bring that story to life. The later journey is to create exceptional experiences for your patients, for your clients and customers, and pets, and all of those, and anybody that you come in contact with. You're always turned on and thinking about the story that you're trying to build for your practice, for your individual uh, doctors. It all ties into what I call your brand culture. Okay, you're building a culture. You really are. So, and down to employees. I have a client who wrote a book, Work Like You Own It. Okay, and it specifically talks to the employee, not the owners. And Work Like You Own It is the embodiment of feeling as though everything you do, even as an employee, matters for you, for the people you come in contact with. And if you can not only say things in the digital world in order to do marketing, but you actually embody these things as you build your brand, and you have your employees and your staff members engage in this culture that you're building, how much better would everybody's life be when they have something to work for and work towards on the staff side, but also showing all of that care come through your brand, right? So what we like to do is focus not on everything, because it's impossible to focus on everything, and then also you're spreading yourself too thin, you're spreading your budget too thin, and so on. You pick, I say 2 to 3, 5 to 7 if you looking to really get the engine rolling and purring pretty quickly, but you don't want to do everything. And the reason being is it's going to be very difficult then to track the data behind everything that you're doing properly. And so you start with a snippet, you track the data for 90 days, and then you check the data, see what's working, see what isn't, pull out what isn't working, pull something new in. And at that point, only a single thing you're pulling in so that you can see if that changes anything. Okay. So what you want to do then is map your current touch points into each journey stage. So going back to that map, okay, you have this journey and you're likely doing things already. So a little bit of homework. The first thing you're going to do is whatever you're currently doing, so your touch points, wherever you're, getting in front of people, try to map that to this journey. Okay, what does that look like? And we have a blank one that you could print here in the presentation. So print it out, make it an exercise with your staff, even talk through things. What are we doing? And then put it through from awareness to promotion. Okay. Then what you're going to do is identify the story gaps. Which stages need stronger messaging? Are you missing entire chunks of the value journey? And that creates, a disconnect between what you have and what you could possibly connect through that journey. So really be mindful. It helps you visualize what you have going on right now, and then what you need to do in order to fill those gaps in your customer value journey. And then you're going to pick 2 to 3 high impact areas to improve. Really, I mean, you could even whittle that down to a single thing at a time. So say you had, going back to this map, say you were missing, 3 of these pieces, then you would start with the earliest part of the journey, right? Makes sense. You don't want to start at the end, you start at the beginning. So uh, say you have identified that, yeah, you're kind of doing some awareness, but you could really strengthen the awareness to get more people, more eyes on things that you're doing, and you're kind of dropping the ball and not really engaging with them. I would start there because that's the very beginning. You see these little confused faces? That's what you're trying to accomplish, is getting them through that journey properly. Uh, Now I have to check in with Holly. I'm a talker and we're at 7:20. So do I can I keep
Yeah, no,
going?
yeah, take another 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I hope everybody's getting value for this. So that is this slide in particular, that's your homework. I want you to all put that into to practice immediately. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. AI in your marketing. Stay authentic in a sea of sameness. Okay, what does that mean? That means that AI should be your assistant, not your voice. So I always like to give this anecdote because it's a very important one. Uh, as soon as AI gained access to the internet, this became a concern of mine, of many people, is what AI is doing in order to give you information is it needs access to information. Where does it gain access to that information? It gains it online a lot of the time, or through the training things that the developers have implemented. And if everybody puts a prompt into AI, gets content written for them, doesn't edit anything, puts it online, what's happening? AI is now referencing itself, right? And if it references itself and that self has given the person who put the prompt in very bad information over the course of time, it compounds and compounds and compounds, and you have uh, a tool that doesn't work anymore. So I encourage everyone I speak to about AI to use AI. It's not a dangerous thing to use AI. It's not taboo. You should use it for productivity purposes to make your life easier, just like any tool makes life easier, right? But then it shouldn't stop there, okay? The opportunity is that AI can accelerate your content creation, it can streamline your productivity and your processes, but the risk is that using stock AI right out of the box without making any changes, it creates generic content, it's indistinguishable from your competition, and then you just become another website that has the same exact information as your competitors. What good does that do anybody? So your advantage is that if you use AI for research, for first drafts, for outlining, and then infuse it with what was I talking about before, your brand story and your culture and all the things that make you and your practice unique, you infuse that, because now you have a framework. It could have possibly taken you hours upon hours to make that framework, but AI is perfectly fine for giving you the framework in 5 seconds. But don't stop there, please, 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 please. So the result is efficient, effective content powered by AI with authenticity and differentiation through human-powered editing, right? The marriage of AI and human ingenuity, as it were, and you get the speed without sacrificing your unique voice, and that is very important. In a world of sameness, you want to be different and you want to build culture. A good recommended reading is Blue Ocean Strategy: How to Create Uncontested Market Space and Make the Competition Irrelevant. So ultimately, you want to be in the blue ocean where you have access to all the fishies without any of the fighting. I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble on about what I love so much, digital marketing and building your brand voice. I am Michael Rapino, creative director and senior partner of MediaStead, soon to be Honey Quill Agency, and thank you so much.
Right. Thank you very much, Michael. Um,
It's my
the
pleasure.
good content, and actually, I have a few questions which we'll wait till the end and look at the Q&A and see what we have to answer. Right now, there's nothing in there.
Sure.
So I will get started. I'll go on about 25 minutes and we'll allow the last 10 for questions. All right, here we go. Let's see. All right. So once you've taken the concepts provided by Michael and created an astounding marketing plan, it's going to hopefully have, your customers with their little patients at the end of the leash or lead line or whatever it is coming in through the door. And now you need to manage your growth. So we're going to watch at, what items do you need to implement in your practice to make sure you are managing, that things are not going out of control, and that you're getting out of your marketing what you wanted, but also it's not running you into the ground. So we'll go talk about that. Many practices in any business, it doesn't necessarily need to be veterinary practices, but I've seen many businesses that grow reactively. We're going like gangbusters. Let's just keep going, and we'll hire as we need. But then all of a sudden, you have to make payroll, and the cash isn't there to be able to do it, or the staff are overworked, and or clients' needs are not being met, and so you're actually losing the clients that you brought in, and it could even create a negative something negative in the community that people are giving bad reviews, and it's counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish. So the key is to use the marketing so that it's bringing in your prospective clients, and that you have the systems in place to be able to make it work so you can take on additional volume, and that you're using your financial planning in conjunction with your market strategy to make sure that you have sustainable growth. Because that's the thing, growth is great, but if it's unsustainable, you run into a problem. And one of the interesting things out there is that, cash is king. I did a seminar one time and did some case studies with businesses that actually went bankrupt. And you know what? Sometimes they went bankrupt when they were at the highest level of profitability because they ran out of cash and they didn't plan accordingly. So we want to make sure that we have a good plan in place and that we have an eye on the horizon where we're heading, and also a finger on the pulse of what we're doing in our practice. So Michael talked about this before, where you're doing certain types of outreach, certain types of marketing campaigns, and you want to be able to make sure that you're measuring it. And I think, Michael, you said, 2 to 3 items, and that way you have the ability to kind of pinpoint what is working and what is not, what is bringing people in the door. So your customer service representatives, so your front desk, should be asking, right away, if there's a telephone call from the client, new patient, where did you hear from us? And then document that in your practice management software. There's often a field in there, and it allows you then to go back and say, let's print out a report and say, where are people hearing us, and what are the dollars associated with that initial visit? Granted, we have a recurring relationship that we're creating, so it's going to have a long-term value, but the only one we're really able to measure is that initial transaction, or the initial couple transactions that have to do with that patient. And your online scheduling can do the same thing. You can have a brief question saying, where did you hear from us? Or a list of bullet points. It might be those 3 items that you're using, a Facebook campaign, you've got Google ads going, and you have an email campaign, just to throw things out there. And so you have those 3 things listed as potential items that they would select. And then also there's the potential there could be referrals coming in. You might want to know who those referrals are coming from. So I like to leave a space for who was the one that sent you to us, and then other. It might be that they drove past your practice and saw your sign out front. I mean, comically, I've been in Stroudsburg operating for many years, and I remember a client coming in and, a new client coming in and said, "Yeah, I just noticed your sign." And I'm like, "Well, it's been there for a while." But it could have been other things as well, and they just happened to look up at the right time on that day. And what I like to do too, if you have a good referral partner, maybe it might warrant some type of a thank you. Just even a written thank you note to say, I've noticed that you've been sending me a lot of business. I greatly appreciate it. Maybe take them out to lunch, whatever it might be. But it's always nice to acknowledge that people are sending clients and patients your way. Then we want to look at the return on investment, and is your marketing strategy worked? And that's what I was talking about, tracking in your practice management, so that we can print those reports. We can go back and say, what are the dollars that we are actually bringing in relation to that cost? It could be that you're running a billboard ad, out on Route 100 or whatever is near you, and it only brings in one patient over 6 months. Those are expensive means of marketing. So unless that one patient brings in, a huge amount of revenue, then that's probably not necessarily the area that you want to be, working on. And growth happens in stages. I like it this way. When I started my practice, I would grow and plateau, stabilize, grow and plateau, and so forth. So that gave me the ability to be able to, do my marketing, bring new clients through the door, take that time at the plateau level to look back and say, is the work getting done? Are, my employees at full capacity? Are they overworked? Do I need to hire? Do I have the right systems in place to make sure that we're operating efficiency? Because it's when you are at the highest stress to your practice, which is growth, and it's good to have growing pains. That was where you will see the pinpoints in your organization that need improvement. And we can think it through, we can create the procedures, but we're always going to have to go back and update them for things that come to light as we are servicing our patients. Work smarter, not harder. Everybody talks about that. Find efficiencies. And you want to make sure that your growth is intentional and not accidental. So you might want to have several campaigns that are targeting different areas so that you can measure it and that you are not overwhelmed with them as they come through the door. So just some financial things to be looking at as you're marketing and bringing new patients and clients and customers through the door is your profit and loss statement, that net number at the bottom, your net income. Profitability does not mean cash in the bank. And I've answered that, fielded that question very many times to say, oh, wow, I made a huge amount of money, but I don't really have anything in the bank. Or it could be that the amount in your bank far exceeds the amount of your net income. It all depends upon, where that money is going. It could be debt items that are not necessarily deductions and so forth. But along with that, you want to make sure that you have a good cash flow forecasting, because if you have a couple slow months coming up, you want to be able to say, or large purchases that you have to make, you want to make sure that you're prepared for it. And if you had to go to a bank and ask for a line of credit or a loan or something like that, you want to do it when you are in good shape, because the bank is far more happy to lend you money when you don't need it than when you really get to dire straits and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I need a loan, I need to cover whatever it is, because you don't want to be using your debt inefficiently and covering operating shortfalls. You want it to be investing in growth strategically so that okay, I need to take a drawdown on the line of credit, but I'm going to pay that back, in a couple weeks or in a month or something like that, as the revenue comes in. And also use healthy debt. I mean, credit cards are high interest. If you're using credit cards with a rolling balance, it's just not an efficient way of using your money, or being over leveraged and using too much debt. And I've seen that happen too, where you're growing so rapidly and people are just pulling, whatever debt is available to them in to make it work, and then just hoping that the outcome, comes back at the end of the day. And a lot of times, sometimes that doesn't. So some key performance indicators that you want to watch, you want to say, what is the revenue per doctor? But if you're a single doctor practice, it might be your revenue per invoice or per visit, or if you're a mobile, maybe going to that's per household. If it's an equine practice that goes to different barns and so forth, you're seeing a lot of patients back to back. So you're going to have, higher revenue versus the traveling that is taken away on the ambulatory practices. You want to look at your labor as a percentage of revenue. Very often, pretty standard in small animal practices is the non-veterinary is about 20%, veterinary is about 20 to 22%. And so that's a large nut, as that payroll component, because it's a service industry, is a large nut. And we want to make sure that we're bringing the revenue in to be able to cover those costs as well as our overhead and operating costs. Client retention. I want to just, talk about this because this is not something you're going to find in your financial statements, but you could be running these campaigns, and as people are coming in and you're saying, where did you hear of us? You could be doing the same in reverse, that once they're checking out at the end of the day to pay their bill, you have a 3-question survey. How was your experience? Is the value there? Did you have a bad experience? Or is there somebody in our practice that deserves a shout out for exceptional service? Whatever it may be. And it also shows that you care, because we want to understand where the shortfalls are. We want to do well, and we love to hear that things are going fabulous, but sometimes the constructive criticism is just as useful. And for the financial aspect, use dashboards, review frequently to spot problems, because if you fly by the seat of your pants, you'll come to the end and have this intuitive feeling, or you're looking at your bank account and saying, wow, that something's not going right here. But if you're not really looking at the individual items or doing the comparative or looking at the return on investment, it's going to catch you late if you don't measure it consistently. So building efficiencies into your practice is, your standard operating procedures. It's best to document what they are. It's going to change, improve, update. If you're in a larger practice where you maybe haven't documented this before, sometimes you're going through the practice manager, working with the, customer service reps to say, hey, what are you doing? What are the steps? You could use a computer program like Scribe that, literally tracks the computer screen changes, so that if you need to train somebody, that is documented. And it is a resource for new employees coming in, or if you have somebody out on maternity leave and someone else needs to cover for you, you have the ability to say, hey, look at this. These are the steps that you need to be able to get this done. And please really do want to be independent. And I agree with Michael with the book, that if they really feel like they're part of the organization, that the culture is there, and that they have the resources that they need, they're going to show initiative and take control of areas where they know they have the information to be able to make those decisions or get the job done without having to tap the practice manager or the doctor. Especially if it's a small organizations, you want to give them the independence and to be able to delegate and say, here, go do this, and here are the tools to do it. Automate where you can. Scheduling, if you have online scheduling, there's even the small animal that's fairly straightforward. If you have the gaps in your program that allow you to schedule someone in and have the customer service check it in the morning, if something came in overnight. But also ambulatory and mobile vets do have options where it will actually schedule with the idea that you are in a specific locale for a day. You're in this zip code for this day and over in that county for another day, or whatever it may be, so that you're not running from A to Z and wasting time on the road. Note scribing. Interesting observation that I found at AVMA was that a veterinarian talked about having note scribing, but they didn't necessarily use the software. They actually had a tech in the room taking down the notes for them as they were going through the exam. And the interesting factor was that the the customer felt like they had a more valuable experience, because as you're going through, taking the temp, listening to the heart rate, maybe get some gut sounds, palpating joints, whatever it may be, and you're speaking out loud what that is, they are seeing and understanding what you're doing a little bit better, and they're seeing the value that's associated with that. Use cloud technology as much as possible, automated billing. All of the practices really should be payment upon receipt. I know in large animal, a lot of times they do the work for the month and they bill monthly because it's just more convenient for the farms and so forth. But especially small animal, you're walking out the door, you've got to pay the bill. And your accounting obviously should be online. I use QuickBooks Online. There's also Xero and some other nice programs. And that way you, your accountant, and so forth all have access to that. And you have the ability to upload your invoices right into the bill so that you have good storage for your documentation that you'll need for the IRS, down the line if you're ever audited. The people side of growth, obviously, we talked about, trying to avoid staff burnout. Employees will leave when they're burnt out, there's no recognition, or there's a bad culture. And that's, Michael was alluding to that as well, that you're creating this environment through your marketing, but also internally, so that your patients want to be there, your employees want to be there, people want to show up in the morning. And also, this really affects the veterinarian, the doctors, the owners. They need to be part of this, because we all get burnt out. If an employee leaves, all of a sudden that stress is on us. Either we need to hire somebody, or sometimes we need to do the work that they used to do to be able to fill the gap. And so we want to make sure that those are as smooth as possible. If somebody's going into maternity leave, do we have these procedures so that someone else can step into their role and do it seamlessly, so that we don't have these hiccups? Good idea is, having some sort of recognition, or having career development, providing continuing education for your techs and assistant. I know one of the practices I worked with in the past, they had one morning per week, I think it was a 2-hour session, where, they didn't open until later, and they had an educational session for their employees weekly, so that they could keep on top of topics, and also talk about what's going on in the practice, so that it was not at a hectic time where everybody's trying to go in 10 different directions. You have their attention. And we want to have work-life balance. Your employees deserve this as much as you do, because we all are better people when we're able to, come to work rested in a good frame of mind. And there's enough emotional fatigue within the veterinary industry for being pulled in different direction, and maybe having to euthanize one pet and see a puppy in the next the next appointment. It's challenging. But as the owner, if you are the owner of your practice, you have to shift from being a technician. And I don't mean to say that you're a vet tech. No, you are a technician. I'm a CPA. I am also a technician in my practice, where I'm doing the work that is generating the revenue, but also I have to step back, have a CEO mindset, and actually look at things from a 30,000-foot view and see where we're at, with that eye towards the future, as well as, seeing where things are, concurrently, so that you are ahead of the decisions that need to be made, and you understand where the business is going. Because if you buy a job, it's not doing anybody any favors. If you're going to be in practice, you have to be a business owner. Delegation, delegate to your staff, trust them. Obviously that's also putting those tools in place so that they know the expectations, how procedures are supposed to be done. If you are a doctor, you'll want to make sure that, you are doing doctor work, and that your technicians are doing technical work, the technician work, your assistants are doing that work. So when we pull the whole plan together, we want to make sure that we have the financial forecasting. We want to be able to have that budget for that marketing strategy, so that we have the dollars allocated. We want to make sure the team is engaged, that, they may need to know what type of marketing we're doing, so that they're aware of the queries and things like that may be coming through the door. I like to grow on plateau personally, or have a steady stream that's going to take you at a good, consistent rate, that's easily and sustainably attainable. Because otherwise, if you have too much rapid growth, it becomes an issue. And you want to be accountable. Obviously, I'm an accountant. I like that word. Monthly reviews, quarterly forecasts, and annually we do kind of a brainstorm of what happened over the last year. And in that budgetary process, when we're looking at the next year coming up, we're saying, okay, this is what happened this year. This is what we expect to happen next year. Do we need to do price changes? Are we expecting a big increase in our costs? So we're looking at that for the next year to make sure. And, our marketing, is there something different that we're going to be implementing? I almost like the idea. I think that Mike, you mentioned doing something maybe differently, analyzing it for 90 days and then, doing something different after that. So what I would suggest is plan your growth, protect your cash, make sure that you're keeping your clients happy and loyal, because those are the ones that are going to be the excited ones at the end of the journey, who are turning around and providing referrals to you. Make sure that we're preventing burnout so that we keep our really good employees, and make sure that quality of life for yourself and your staff and your patients are at your highest priority. So this is where I say thank you very much for my portion of the presentation. And I just want to give a heads up to many of you equine folks that are out there. I will be at AAEP in Denver in December and at booth 2653, so come see me. I'll be offering a free copy of my book, The Vet Advisor. When you receive these slides, you can actually literally click on The Vet Advisor and it will take you to Amazon. I also do have it available on Barnes & Noble, or if you're not interested in reviewing the whole book, you can get the white paper download on my website with this link. You'll have my email address here and a link to schedule a 15-minute complimentary call. And what that involves is saying, let's have a quick conversation, where you're at, what's your practice, are there some issues that you're facing, can we work together? And then that will lead to a longer conversation. I have an hour-long discovery meeting that I provide. Again, it's complimentary because it's getting us to the point where I'm getting a better understanding of your practice, what your needs are, and you and I have an opportunity to see if it's a good working relationship and if we want to go further from there. And in each point, we always, have the engagement where your fees are quoted up front so that there's no surprises. So thank you very much for joining Michael and I. And let me stop my sharing because I want to go and check the Q&A. Let's see here. Well, we don't have any outside questions, but I did have a few for you, Michael.
Sure.
Let's see here. You mentioned, I think one of the things that we talked about as we were going into our presentation was that so often it does still come down to that personal relationship and how you bridge that gap in your digital marketing. And I've seen some folks talking about, okay, on Facebook, you really want to use very unique and almost personal content to some extent. What is your thought on that?
So I think that authenticity is extremely important these days, especially when you have so many people, regurgitating information that AI creates, or now there is a differentiation between personal posts and being authentic. So I wouldn't, in my, on your practice Facebook page, grab your phone and you're at home, maybe it's your child's birthday party, and it has nothing to do with your culture, your story, again going back to the brand story. However, encouraging all of your staff members perhaps to occasionally grab their phone and do something that isn't quite polished and professional, as it were. You're not going out and getting a videographer to follow you around every week or whatever the case may be. Authenticity is important. So seeing real people doing real things that get real results, that's different than just, personal posts. Does that make sense?
And I think I probably stated that wrong because I know that uh, some of them literally do have somebody come in and do a whole bunch of
Mm,
video, videoing of the practice,
mhm.
interviewing, or some candid shots with the staff. And these are the things that kind of brings the personal, or you're right, the authentic approach, so that people feel like you're approachable.
Absolutely. I feel like it's important to, especially when for many, many, many decades, marketing consisted of being talked at. You know what I mean? You had no say. These days, it's all about communication, connection, building rapport, relationship building, and being authentic. You'll hear that word. I talk about that so much when I'm speaking with my clients and doing our onboarding and really coming up with that strategy, because it always used to be that the words, the videos, the visuals, they were coming at you and you had no interaction with it, right? That's where engagement comes in these days. And so it's important to have, and I mentioned this earlier as well, an omnipresent strategy where you're kind of playing in everybody's playground where they feel comfortable, right? You're going to, and also uh, not doing the same thing across all platforms. That's a mistake a lot of people make, is that they don't lean into the platform that they're on. It's, the platform itself was built for a purpose, yet for some reason everybody puts the same exact thing across every platform, as opposed to leaning into the format, leaning into the way people like to consume that information on that particular platform. People are using that platform for a reason, so don't put something that takes them out of the flow that they're used to. Make sure that you create content and build an asset library that speaks to the platform itself and leans into what purpose that platform is there for. Does that make sense?
Give us an example of veterinary practice using Facebook as a tool or a platform.
So Facebook is interesting. Uh, well, all a lot of the platforms are interesting because they're integrating many different kind of mini formats within what they originally were meant for. I always considered Facebook a very long form content platform. Same thing with LinkedIn. Like if you're a business to business, you want to build some business to business relationships. LinkedIn is very long form and very you know kind of Q&A or interactive in the way that they give you the ability to curate your content, if that makes sense. So LinkedIn, as an example, they have the ability to actually do something that's similar to blogging, where you're writing long form posts where people can consume information. So, uh, you might use LinkedIn, and I'll go back to Facebook as well because it's a similar thing with long form content. But you might use LinkedIn to kind of tease a longer article that you might have on your website, because the format is similar. They give you that post format where you could put maybe a listicle version, right? A listicle, if you're not familiar, the people watching this video aren't familiar with, is a very short form where you're pulling maybe 5 or 7 important points to cover, and you're doing it in a bullet list format. And then you can take that listicle that you might have posted on LinkedIn and say, for a longer format version as well as a video, click here to learn even more about topic XYZ. And now they're on your website. And then from there, possibilities are endless because they're in your playground now, right? You can, you know, cross link within that article to various other resources. You can break that article up with a call to action. There are so many things you could do there. Same thing with Facebook. It's a longer format, and Facebook is interesting as well because you can even create a private group that ties directly in to your page, where the page, Facebook is really good at not selling, but building your brand, building your culture, showing what you're all about. And
Right.
then, you know, within that realm, they give you the ability to create a group where you can engage even more deeply with the people who want to engage with you, or even have a private Facebook group for, you know, patients or clients of yours to go in and, you know, build a bigger community within your brand.
Right, right,
Right.
right. So, you want to use that website as a go-to because that increases your SEO. It hopefully, brings your landing higher up on the pages.
Sure.
Um, when you were talking about tracking the items and identifying the story gaps. Can you expand on that? What exactly does that mean? Like if you're in a position where you're getting some attention, but you're not getting the engagement and you're saying that, there may be gaps there, how do you identify those gaps? If you can give an example.
So each this ties kind of into, do you mind if I share again?
Well, yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
Let me see,
I
did
think
I?
it's still open there.
Oh,
Yep, it's
let's see.
still available to share.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So for some reason I closed the thing, so bear with me. So just it ties directly into the map that I was talking about. So the customer value journey is what I was referring to when I said to find gaps in your story. So let me pull this
That's
up
my
again.
question is like, how do you identify that?
Right.
The gap is
So
there. How do you surmount that gap? I guess maybe that's more of my question is, like
right.
how do you get, okay, you're getting awareness, you're not getting people to engage. How do you bridge that gap? I guess maybe that's probably the better question.
Okay. So there are a couple, and it's of course complicated to answer in a format like this. I'll do my best. So there are a couple things happening. The first thing is you want to make sure that you're connecting all of the pieces of the journey together. And so each one of these boxes here, there there are things that you do that tie directly into each phase. So awareness is getting in front of people, as an example. And so the way that you do that is through, you know, Facebook posts, as an example, LinkedIn, all of the social media, paid advertising, anything that you can do, even, even, you know, if you wanted to go the traditional route, there's no reason why digital marketing can't tie into traditional. You were talking about billboards and things like that. Anything that gets you in front of eyes, uh, that's the awareness phase. Now the engagement, and so what you want to do is go through each one of these boxes and figure out if you're doing those things. That's the first step. Now, if you are doing the things, now and I'm happy to provide you a list of potential platforms and techniques and strategies that can tie into here as well. I'll put that together as maybe a PDF that goes along with the presentation just for a little extra value there. But if you have these boxes filled, if you printed this out and wrote down all of the things, and you're like, huh, okay, well, I'm getting people, you know, I'm getting in front of people and I'm pushing them to my website, and they're reading articles and they're subscribing and yada yada yada, and there is some kind of gap. So maybe they subscribe, but then they stop there. And it's very possible that you can grow an email list of 20,000, but only 200 to 1,000 people truly open those emails and read everything and click the links. But the only way to know any of that is through data collection. And so every platform that you could use, including your website, your email marketing software, they all come with analytics. And that is where you can see what's happening. So if it's the website, generally it's Google Analytics. There are a lot of open source as well as private Google Analytics alternatives out there that you can tie into your website as well. And you open up your analytics and you could truly see every single person, unless they're, using a private browser or something like that. You can see every page that they've been on, how long they've spent on your website, whether or not, like if you sent them to a landing page, did they go to your landing page and then bounce right away? Or did they click on the link that you wanted them to click on or fill out the form that you wanted them to fill out? And then you put all that data together and you come up with what's called a conversion rate.
Right.
Same thing with subscriptions. You have a list of 10,000, you send an email campaign out, maybe it's a series of 3 emails, and you look at the analytics and you see that the open rate of your emails is, out of that 10,000, maybe 1,000. And then from there, the 1,000 people who opened it, maybe 200 clicked. And then if you're savvy, you've set it up so that if they click from your email to a landing page, if you did it correctly, you could actually see exactly who, like in terms of the amount of traffic that comes to that landing page, actually came from that newsletter.
Okay. Yep.
And then from there, you could say, all right, well, that 200 turned into 100 forms being filled out, or whatever that is. And then you come up with, again, the conversion rate. And if that conversion rate is within, the correct percentage that you're shooting for in your goals, we use industry standards most of the time for as a baseline and then try to optimize it. Then you do CRO, conversion rate optimization, in order to get a better conversion rate by tweaking something that might have caused someone to fall off
Right.
within the
Okay.
process of point A to point B. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically you're going back and saying, okay, do I need to change the content, in order to be able to keep their desire to be able to click forward and then measuring that. I see what you're talking about. So
Um,
really cool.
so the other thing that you can do is what's called A/B testing, where you can put there's a mechanism where you can actually have two of the exact same version of a landing page up, as an example, or things like that, where you've tweaked the content or you have a different call to action or whatever that looks like. And then you randomly send a 50-50 percentage of the total to the
A
the
different page.
the
Yeah.
different page, and then you see
Yeah.
which one performed better.
Right. Oh,
And
cool.
then you use that one and bring in another one, and so it's always about tweaking the engine, making it run more smoothly and things like that.
Right. Oh, really good. Thank you so much. We still don't have any other questions. I'm sorry from
Uh,
from our audience.
no
Um,
problem. If you, I
so
don't know, I know that these are generally an hour. I did write some notes when you were doing your presentation. If
sure.
you don't mind, I can do
Yeah.
that. Okay, so
Yeah.
when you were covering client retention and talking about questionnaires, I just wanted to mention briefly the so uh, there's a term that we use in digital marketing called social proof. And so one great way to do that when you're kind of making sure that you're focusing on client retention and you are creating these questionnaires, it could potentially turn into testimonials, case studies. Say you're a surgical practice or something of that nature, and you have a success story that you really want to shine a spotlight on. I mean, all of those things again build that culture. So that's a perfect opportunity when you're tying client retention into these other mechanisms that a give you just naturally content, right? It's just a natural content creation mechanism there. And then you're creating social proof, which is all about trustworthiness, being an authority in your industry, and things like that. And then also making so those success stories make the person uh, who the success story is about feel good because you're talking about that success, and then that ties into the client retention. So it's all very cyclical there. And it can be a content creation engine, it can be a social proof engine, a testimonial and case study engine, so many things there. uh, the KPI section that you were talking about, yeah, while you were talking about key performance indicators for your side of things, the financial side and the business growth side of things. We also use that term in digital marketing. And so we also have a term called vanity metrics. I don't know if you use that one very often, but
Yeah. Okay.
vanity metrics are things that make you feel good in terms of like, oh, look at that big number that we attained, but that doesn't correlate to business growth. It doesn't correlate to money in your pocket or any of that, or more customers, or so be careful not to, again, kind of lean into the things that are maybe easy wins, and you get that big percentage, but that percentage doesn't mean anything. So you want to be careful there. Okay, so vanity
Right.
metrics does not equal progress or growth, right?
Right. Okay.
Uh, Training. So going into the training section where you're talking about the staff, and that's of course a amazing culture builder and things like that, making people feel good. Now, staff retention is important, just as client retention is important. I would say that you would probably argue that staff retention is equally, if not more important, because there is a cost associated to losing staff and then trying to hire new staff. That whole process is very costly, I would imagine, right? So
Yeah. Mhm.
if you want to go into just briefly, what that might look like in terms of, how you would set yourself up for better uh, staff retention, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen instances where you actually survey the staff, or you have reviews. Whether it's absolutely annually sit down. We used to do something in our practice where we had a quarterly, just sit down, and then a formal review at the end of the year. So we always kept the door open and dialogued about the job. How is it going? Where can we do better? Things like that. And hopefully it shows that you care.
Sure.
And you want to keep good people.
How do you feel about incentivizing things? Is that kind of a no-no, or would you say that
No, I mean,
incentivizing your staff is a good way of doing that?
sure, you can do that as well. Have them in as a part of the, profit growth. I mean, I have practices that do that they look at it quarterly and say, okay, this is where we are. This is, a portion that you're going to get, because of, we've met these goals. And, it ends up in their paycheck. Absolutely. That's another,
Perfect.
right?
Also in your automation section, I just want it kind of got my brain thinking about this. Now, uh, a lot of dollars could potentially be lost, right? You might be doing all of the right things. Going back to the gaps, right? You might be doing all of the right things and getting to that phone call as an example, but going also tying staffing in, let's do that. You might be understaffed, you might be over marketing, you might be bringing a ton of people in as phone calls and things like that, but then you're losing all of those dollars by simply
Somebody
not
can't pick
being
up.
able. Yeah, exactly, right. So I've been in situations where colleagues of mine have optimized that process, and out they made their clients 250,000, 500,000 more dollars a year, because no, we didn't market ourselves more. We actually optimized what we were already doing and making sure that those phone calls were being answered, or the process was more finely tuned, or whatever that looks like, right? So you could be just leaving dollars on the table,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
As you could tell, I'm a talker. I could probably go on, but I will leave it there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them via email, or I am giving you my presentation. I'm happy to also provide you with that document that I told you about that ties right into the journey.
Right.
And I'd be happy to do another one of these.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, we will be sending out the slides and the recording after this webinar is completed sometime later this week or early next week. It will go out by email. So if anyone that missed it or anybody that's on YouTube can, click on my YouTube channel and view past webinars as well. So thank you very much, Michael. I really appreciate you,
Absolutely.
joining me and sharing your knowledge and the journey of marketing.
That's my pleasure. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
And thank you very much to our attendees. We really appreciate having you here, and everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.